How are you? It's probably a question someone asked you today. And chances are you gave the answer most of us give. I'm good. I'm okay. But maybe that wasn't the real answer. Maybe the real answer was, I'm kind of okay. Funny thing is, we rarely say that out loud. Not because we're trying to hide something, but because somewhere along the way, how are you stopped being an actual question. It became a greeting. People ask while they're walking past you. Sometimes they don't even wait for the answer. And we just reply, I'm good, almost automatically, as if that's the expected response. But what if, just for a moment, you answered honestly, not to anyone else, just to yourself? What will your answer be? Welcome to Sin Manual, No Playbook, a space where there are no perfect formulas and no step by step paths. Here, we talk about life as it is, with doubts, with mistakes, with moments of clarity, and others where we are in the middle just trying to understand what's next. This isn't a podcast to tell you what to do, it's a space to question, to feel, and maybe find your own answers, because at the end, no one gave us a manual, and still, we keep moving forward. I've been thinking about something lately. It feels like we're living under this constant pressure to be okay. Not just okay, but happy, motivated, productive, confident, like always moving forward, always growing, always smiling. As if anything less means we are somehow falling behind. And honestly, I don't believe that's real. Not anymore. Because I am not at my best every single day. Some mornings I wake up excited, full of energy, ready to work, ready to create, ready to talk to people. And then there are mornings when I simply don't. Nothing bad happened. Nobody hurt me. I didn't receive terrible news. I'm just not feeling like myself today. For a long time, I thought something had to be wrong. I felt like I needed to be fixed immediately, figure out what was broken, get back to normal as fast as possible. Until one day I realized something surprisingly simple. Maybe nothing was broken. Maybe I was just having a normal human day. And somehow we've forgotten that those days exist. We have convinced ourselves that life is either amazing or terrible, as if there were nothing in between. But the truth is, most of life happens in that middle space. We are not celebrating, we are not falling apart, we are just living. Yet, somehow, those ordinary emotional days make us feel guilty, almost like we have to justify the world a better version of ourselves. Social media certainly doesn't help. Open any app, and it feels like everyone is winning, everyone is traveling, building a business, working out, learning a new skill. posting inspirational quotes before breakfast, and if you wake up feeling tired or emotionally flat, it's easy to wonder, is it just me? Well, no, it's not just you. And it's not just me either. One of the most meaningful things that happened since I started this podcast has been reading messages from people. People writing things like, I honestly thought I was the only one who felt this way. Or listening to this felt like hearing my own thoughts out loud. Every time I read something like that, I'm reminded of something beautiful. We are so much more alike than we think. We all have doubts. We all get overwhelmed. We all carry things we don't always talk about. And every once in a while, we all have days when we are kind of okay. That's really what today's conversation is about. I'm not here to tell you how you should feel. I'm not here to convince you to stay positive. And I am definitely not here to give you another 5-step formula for happiness. I'm simply sharing what I've learned through my own life, especially through my own mistakes and through my own quiet moments. I'm not talking about life's biggest tragedies today, like losing someone you love, losing a job, facing a serious illness. Those moments deserve their own conversation, and of course they hurt. Today I'm talking about something much quieter. Those ordinary days when something feels off, but you can't quite explain why. If that's where you are today, I want you to know something. There is a very good chance that thousands of people, maybe even millions, are feeling exactly the same way. You just don't know it. Because today, just like you, they answered, I'm good. So maybe this is where we should begin. When was the last time you asked yourself, honestly, how am I really doing? Not the answer you'd give your coworkers, not the answer you'd post online, not even the answer you'd give your family, just the honest answer you would give yourself. Because maybe that's the most important conversation you'll have today. There's something I said in an earlier episode, and I still believe like I still believe it just as much as today. And I said it's okay not to be okay. The important part is not staying there forever. Because to me, emotions are supposed to be visitors. They knock on the door, they come in, they have something to say, and eventually they leave. The problem isn't that they show up. The problem is when you give them a permanent address. For years, I fought my emotions. If I felt sad, I wanted to stop feeling sad immediately. If I felt frustrated, I wanted that feeling gone as quickly as possible. If I woke up in a bad mood, I would get frustrated for being in a bad mood. Just think about that for a second. I wasn't just dealing with one emotion. I was fighting the emotion and then fighting myself for having it. Eventually, I realized something. Maybe my emotions weren't my enemies. Maybe they were trying to tell me something. And before asking, how do I get rid of this feeling? I started asking a different question. Why is this feeling here? That one question changed a lot for me. because I've discovered something interesting. Sometimes we think we know exactly what's bothering us, and we are completely wrong. And it has happened to me more times than I can count. I think I'm upset because of work, or at least that's what I tell myself. Then I get home and I answer someone with less patience than they deserve. Maybe a family member, maybe a close friend, or someone who simply asked me an innocent question. And a few hours later, I realize work was never the real problem. It was simply where the pressure finally came out. That led me to one of the biggest lessons I've learned about emotions. We don't always explode where the problem began. Most of the time, we explode wherever someone happens to be standing nearby. Think about that. How many times have you had a difficult day? And the person who ends up receiving the worst version of you is the person you love the most. Not because they caused it, but because they happen to be there. Or maybe you are carrying financial stress, and suddenly you are impatient with the waiter, or a coworker, or the person driving in front of you, or the customer service agent who simply answered the phone. None of them created the storm. They just happened to walk into it. That's why these days, whenever I notice myself becoming unusually irritated, I try to stop and ask, am I really upset about this? Or is this simply the last drop in a cup that's been filling up for days? And honestly, the answer surprises me more often than not. Sometimes I'm not angry, I'm exhausted. Sometimes I'm not frustrated, I'm just worried. Sometimes I am not reacting to what just happened. I'm reacting to everything I've been carrying for weeks. And then there are other days, the ones that confuse me the most, when nothing happened. I slept well, nobody upset me, nothing went wrong, and somehow I still don't feel like myself. For a long time, those days bothered me. I felt like I had to explain them, analyze them, or fix them. Now I don't. Now I simply tell myself, you know what? Today I'm not at my best. And that's okay. I don't spend the rest of the day judging myself for it. I don't convince myself that something is wrong with me because I've learned something incredibly freeing. Not every emotion needs an immediate explanation. Some emotions simply need a little space. And strangely enough, the moment I stop fighting them, they often begin to fade on their own. There is one sentence that over time became part of my own life philosophy. And it goes like this: peace didn't begin the day I stopped feeling uncomfortable emotions. Peace began the day I stopped believing that those emotions meant there was something wrong with me. Because being kind of okay doesn't mean you're broken, it simply means you're human. So maybe the question worth asking ourselves isn't, how do I make this feeling disappear? Maybe the better question is, what is this feeling trying to teach me? There's something else I've learned over the years, and honestly, it's one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn. Sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. I mean, not forever, but just for a little while. Just long enough to let your emotions settle before your decisions take over your life. These days, I have a simple rule. Whenever I'm not feeling like myself, I try not to make important decisions. Not because every decision I make in these moments will be wrong, but because I've learned that when my emotions are running high, my perspective usually isn't at its best. That applies to work, to relationships, to difficult conversations, even to text messages. How many times have we written a message while we were angry, only to wish we had never sent it, or if we are lucky, we are able to delete it? I know I have, and more than once. I've learned that not every conversation has to happen immediately. Sometimes waiting until tomorrow is the wisest thing we can do. Because there's a huge difference between responding and reacting. To me, responding comes from clarity. Reacting usually comes from emotion. And those two don't always lead us to the same place. So when I notice myself getting irritated or overwhelmed or emotionally tired, I pause. Not because I'm avoiding the problem or because I'm pretending everything is fine, but because I want to understand what's happening before I decide what to do about it. And during that pause, there's one practice that has helped me more than almost anything else, and I mentioned before meditation. And again, before you picture someone sitting perfectly still on top of a mountain, let me say something. I don't believe there's only one right way to meditate. I don't think there's a universal technique or a perfect posture or a magic number of minutes. To me, meditation is deeply personal. Each of us finds our own way, and that's okay. For me, meditation has never been about emptying my mind, because honestly, I don't even know if that's possible in my case. My mind still thinks, it remembers, it imagines, it wonders. But something beautiful begins to happen. The noise gets quieter. And I didn't even realize how much noise I was carrying until I experienced that silence. Because think about it. All day long, we're responding to the world. Emails, phone calls, deadlines, messages, expectations. We spend so much time responding to everyone else that sometimes we forget to listen to ourselves. That's what meditation became for me. Not an escape from life, but a return to myself. It's the moment when I stop asking, what does everyone else need from me? And I start asking, what do I need right now? How am I? How am I really? And here's what surprised me. Very often the answer wasn't what I expected. Sometimes I thought I was angry when I was actually exhausted. Frustrated when I was really anxious. Sometimes I thought I needed to push harder when what I actually needed was rest. That kind of honesty changes something because once I understand what's really happening, I am no longer fighting an invisible enemy. Now I know what I'm dealing with. There's an old idea that says what we resist persists. I don't know if that's always true, but I know it has been true for me. The more I try to force uncomfortable emotions away, the longer they seem to stay. The moment I stopped treating them like enemies, I started understanding them. That doesn't mean I enjoy feeling anxious or frustrated or drained, or of course I don't. It simply means I no longer assume those emotions are proof that something is wrong with me. Sometimes they are simply telling me you've been caring too much, or you need to slow down, or maybe you have forgotten to take care of yourself. And I want to make something very clear. I am not suggesting that we normalize feeling miserable all the time. That's not what this episode is about. If you've been feeling emotionally overwhelmed day after day, week after week, month after month, that's different. That deserves attention. And asking for help is never a sign of weakness. Actually, in my opinion, is one of the bravest things a person can do. Today, I'm talking about something else. Those ordinary days. Those days when you're simply not at your best. Understanding that those days are part of being human is exactly what helped me stop fighting myself. And maybe if you're not feeling like yourself today, the first thing you need isn't another solution. Maybe it's simply permission to pause. Once I've taken that pause, once I have given myself a chance to understand what I'm feeling, there's something else that I've learned. Sometimes, sometimes the healthiest thing that I can do is change my focus. Notice I didn't say ignore the problem. I'm not talking about pretending everything's fine. I'm talking about giving my mind a chance to breathe. Because there's a big difference between reflecting and replaying the same thoughts over and over again. Reflection brings clarity. Rumination just drains us. Whenever I catch myself going in circles, thinking about the same thing, asking the same questions without finding new answers, I know it's time to interrupt that cycle. Not forever, just long enough to remind my brain that life is bigger than whatever is happening in that moment. So sometimes I watch a movie, usually comedy, because if I'm already having a difficult day, I don't need a heartbreaking movie making it even harder, right? I like to cook, so sometimes I cook. I love trying a new recipe. Not because cooking solves my problem, but because for an hour my mind is focused on something completely different. So I'm paying attention to, I don't know, to flavors and timing and textures. Other days I'll listen to music or pick up a book. Sometimes I simply put on my headphones and go for a walk. The activity itself isn't really the point. The point is giving my mind permission to step outside the loop. For someone else, that might be painting, working in the garden, writing, playing an instrument, organizing a room, anything that wakes up that creative part of you. Because I've noticed something interesting. When we are creating, we are no longer consumed by what we are carrying. For a little while, our attention moves somewhere healthier. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. Now, I also want to be realistic because someone listening right now may be thinking, that sounds great, but I'm at work. I can just stop everything and watch a movie. And they're right. Life doesn't always give us that option. Most of us have responsibilities, jobs, deadlines, people who depend on us. The world doesn't stop just because today is in our best day. And honestly, that's part of being an adult. Think about a mother or a father. Imagine sitting down with your 12-year-old child and unloading every fear, every frustration, every emotional struggle you're carrying. That child isn't supposed to carry that weight. They need a parent, they need the stability. Or imagine you're leading a company. You can't walk into Monday morning's meeting and say, I'm not feeling great today, so I don't want anyone talking to me. People are looking to you for direction, for leadership, for decisions. The truth is, all of us play different roles. Sometimes we're parents, sometimes we're sons of daughters, sometimes we're leaders, sometimes we are the person everyone else depends on. And those roles come with responsibility. But here's the important part. There is a huge difference between fulfilling your responsibilities and pretending you are perfectly fine. I can show up, do my job, keep my commitments, be responsible, and still admit, at least to myself or to someone I deeply trust, that today I'm not at my best. That's not weakness, that's honesty. And I've learned that honest conversations are incredibly healing. Not conversations with everyone, not everyone has earned access to your inner world, but with the right people. Those conversations remind us that we don't have to carry everything alone. There's something else I've changed over the years. I've become much more careful about the conversations I choose to enter, especially arguments. There was a time when I felt like I needed to respond to everything, every opinion, every disagreement, every controversial post, as if it were my responsibility to convince people that I was right. Not anymore. These days, I ask myself a very simple question. Will this conversation leave me in a better place than where I am right now? If the answer is no, I let it go. That happens on social media. Sometimes I read a post and I already know exactly where the comments are headed. I know it will become an endless argument. Nobody will change anyone's mind. Everybody will live frustrated. So I simply keep scrolling. Sometimes I unfollow the account. Sometimes I quietly remove someone from my feed. Like no announcement, no dramatic goodbyes. I just choose peace. And honestly, I've started doing the same thing in real life because not every debate deserves my energy. Not every disagreement deserves my attention. For years, I confused being right with being at peace. Now I know they are not the same thing. Sometimes you can win the argument and still lose your peace. And to me, that's too high a price to pay. These days, I rather protect my peace than protect my ego. Because when I'm already kind of okay, the last thing I need is to make myself feel even worse. There is a song I like, I loved for a long time. It's called Everybody Hurts by REM. And what has always stayed with me isn't just the melody, which I love. It's the honesty behind the title. Everybody hurts. Not some people, not weak people, not people who can't handle life. Everybody. And I think that's something we need to hear more often. Because somewhere along the way, we started believing that struggling meant we were failing, that feeling overwhelmed meant we weren't strong enough, that having an off day meant we were doing something wrong. I don't believe that anymore. I think it's simply part of being human. What I love most about that song isn't that it's about pain. It's that it normalizes something we all experience. It reminds us that difficult moments aren't proof that we're broken. They are proof that we're alive. As I said before, one of the greatest gifts this podcast has given me has been hearing from so many of you. Like sometimes I will receive a message that says, I thought I was the only one who felt this way. And, and messages from people saying, well, it was like hearing myself. And when see that, when I hear that, I stop for a moment because those messages remind me why I started doing this. They remind me that we are all carrying things other people can't see. That behind every smile, there might be a story. Behind every I'm good, there might be someone who's simply trying to get through the day. Maybe that's true for someone sitting next to you at work. Or maybe it's true for the person who served you coffee this morning. Or maybe it's true for someone listening to this episode right now from another city, from another country at this exact same moment. And if that's the case, I hope they hear this part because I want them to know they are not alone. Sometimes we think we are the only ones asking certain questions, the only ones who wake up feeling emotionally tired, the only ones who don't always have the answers. But what if we're not? What if there are thousands of people right now thinking exactly what you're thinking, feeling exactly what you're feeling? We simply don't know because everyone keeps saying, I'm good. If you listened to this podcast before, you've probably noticed something. I don't come here pretending to have all the answers. I don't. Because I'm still learning. I'm still making mistakes. Still figuring life out. One day at a time. This podcast has never been about teaching people how to live. It's been about sharing what life has been teaching me. And if something I've learned happens to help someone else along the way, then I'm grateful. Before we finish, I want to make one thing very clear. This episode, again, isn't about glorifying emotional pain. It's not about accepting permanent sadness as if that's just the way life is. That's not the message. If you have been feeling emotionally overwhelmed for a very long time, again, there are moments when asking for help isn't just important, it's necessary. And there's courage in doing that. Real courage. Today, I simply wanted to talk about those ordinary days. Those days when you're not falling apart, but you're not exactly thriving either. Those days when the most honest answer you could give is, I'm kind of okay. So tomorrow, someone will probably ask you again, how are you? And chances are you'll smile and say, I'm good. You know what? That's okay. You don't owe everyone access to your heart. Not everyone needs to know your story. But I hope when you are alone, when the day gets quiet, when there's nobody else to impress, you ask yourself that same question. And this time I hope you answer honestly. Because saying, I'm kind of okay, isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're paying attention, that you're listening to yourself, that you're choosing honesty over perfection. And maybe that's where healing begins. Not by pretending we're always okay, but by accepting that sometimes we are not. So, thank you for spending these last few minutes with me. And thank you for every message you've sent. Because even though I'm the one speaking to this microphone, you have reminded me over and over again that this conversation has never really been about me. It's about us. It's about the parts of ourselves we don't always talk about. The questions we quietly carry, the emotions we sometimes hide, and the realization that maybe we are all a little more alike than we ever imagined. So, if somewhere during today's episode you found yourself thinking, that sounds exactly like me, then let me leave you with one final thought. You're not the only one. You never were, and you never will be. Because every once in a while, all of us are simply kind of okay. So, if you made it this far, thank you. Thank you for giving me your time. And thank you too for giving some of that time to yourself. I'll see you in the next episode, and remember, everything will be all right.